welcome to Ask Earl Anything. I don't know if I'm going to use that intro. That was kind of out there, wasn't it? It was me just playing any out there stuff I could think of playing. A bunch of jazz licks and stuff. Anyhow, today's Ask Earl Anything will probably be a short Ask Earl Anything. I have 3 questions, I believe. Maybe 4. And my first question comes from, it's 3 questions. My first question comes from Robert Gifford. And he said, to continue the discussion on cymbals, Robert jumped in on the discussion on the discussion in the last show. Another possible interesting question for the next or future Ask Earl Anything. Thoughts on lathed versus unlathed versus partially lathed cymbals. Well, Robert, great question. My first experience with unlathed cymbals was the Paiste Rude cymbals. And there was something about the look of the Paiste Rude cymbal back in the 1980s that made me want to listen to it and try to play it. Now, the Rude cymbals are known for being unlathed blanks pretty much. They're just like Paiste unlathed blanks with hammering on it. That's all they are. And a lot of guys thought they were really heavy and really thick, and they were very much a heavy metal cymbal players. And I think a lot of heavy metal guys still today use them. The funny thing about the Rude hi-hats that I had was I found out that the weight was kind of in the same range as a set of new beats. They weren't that heavy, and they had a different sound to them. And they had more of a darker kind of thing in my ears for Paistes, darker than the 505 hats that I have, which are kind of bright and cut through they're chunkier kind of hi-hats. So I was attracted to the look of them. I have to be honest, it was a look thing at first. And a guy named David Garibaldi playing them for a while. And they kind of reminded me a little bit of Gad's cymbal in look. Not so much sound, I don't think, really. But the Paiste Rudes were the first unlathed cymbal I ever played. Now, most of my cymbals, the majority of my cymbals are lathed cymbals, and there's different types of lathing. The Paiste giant beats have a very fine lathing going on, and they lathe on both sides. These 505s from the 70s and 80s, this is from the 70s, I believe, they have a different lathing pattern, closer to 2002s and early giant beats. But not quite 2002s. They got their own thing. They got hammering on it, but not like a really pronounced hammering like you find on the giant beats today. They've got a very nice pronounced hammering, but not as much as on the traditionals. And how does the lathing affect versus the non-lathing? I think that depends on the cymbal. What I've seen it done now into the 2000s, when you started seeing companies like Istanbul making unlathed bottom cymbals, they were going for a darker sound. So you might lathe the top and unlathe the bottom. And I have a cymbal from Istanbul called a Pasha Ride. And it's basically a 16-inch Pasha Ride. I use it mostly as a bottom hi-hat cymbal. But that cymbal's got kind of a darkness to it because of the unlathed bottom. So I think we've seen a lot of unlathed cymbals, and usually when you go with the completely unlathed cymbals, you're looking at trying to get that dark thing. Which, it's kind of funny, but all my questions this week, all 3 questions, because I kind of looked at them before I brought them in, have to do with these kind of dark unlathed cymbals, and companies that did that. The next question, and I'm going to kind of put them all together this week because they all kind of go together. Everything's about cymbals this week. My next question came from Jazz Drummer Man. He asked another question. He thought that the question he gave me on Kazaa cymbals was pretty tough because he's right. I was a little taken back by the Kazaa cymbals. And to be honest, let me say this about Kazaa cymbals. Somebody pointed out to me that the Kazaa cymbals are actually made in Taiwan. So that means they may be coming from more of a Wuhan, China vibe. But not necessarily, because they could be getting their blanks and stuff from Turkey too. It's really a tough thing to really understand where any of these I'm going to call them, for lack of a better word, B cymbal companies. See, your A symbol companies are Zildjian, Sabian, Paiste. Mynel has put itself in the ranks of the A Zildjian companies without a doubt today, especially since the YouTube generation. And Istanbul, Agape and Mehet, because they're all connected to one another. You know, after that, if there's another one that's going to be coming in, it's going to be my third question, which is about Bosphorus cymbals, because they've been around 20 years now, and they make some incredibly great cymbals that a lot of pro guys love playing Bosphorus cymbals. So Bosphorus kind of sneaks in there with Istanbul, and of course, don't forget UFib. Okay, those are A cymbals. I don't put Wuhan in A cymbal land because it's an A recognized name, but Wuhans don't sound like A cymbals to me ever. I'm sorry. They sound like China cymbals, but they don't sound like A cymbals. They don't have a line that has a diverse line of cymbals even. So if I was going to look at my real A's, the A plus cymbals are your Sabian, Zildjian, Paiste. Mynel's come into that rank. So has UFIP, been around a long time. You know, those cymbals all kind of live together. And now you got Bosphorus sneaking in there too. So those are the A cymbals. Everything else is a B symbol to me. And Kazaa is definitely a B symbol. Other B symbols, soul tone, heartbeat, and nothing bad about these cymbals, but they are what they are. Okay? And I had a question about big and ugly cymbals. Well, big and ugly was, or the monarch cymbals, were the cymbals that Sabian came out with about 2000, I don't know if it was 14 or 15 or 16 even. I'm not sure what NAMM show they came out at. It was right around the time of the Caropes. And they were trying to get that really big and nasty sound. Everybody wants big cymbals. Matter of fact, today I've got my big cymbal up. This is the biggest cymbal I own, a 24-inch giant beat. The funny thing was, everybody, by the mid-2010s and the teens, was going for dark cymbals. Everybody. I didn't see a rock guy not trying to go for the dark cymbals, and they all wanted big dark cymbals. The worship scene, the Christian worship scene, everything's big dark cymbals. By 2015, I had started getting into Paistes, and I realized the reason why I've moved into Paistes, I've been thinking about this, is because they're not dark cymbals. They're not. They're bright. They got a nice place. They got a nice space. Now, you can get dark Paistes. You can go for 20s, Masters Series, Paiste Master Series cymbals. You can get the darkness out of your traditionals, like the traditional line. And they've got a great, but Paistes are got a nice, bright thing going on. You know what I'm saying? So by the time we got into the big, dark, and ugly cymbals, I was kind of out of them. I bought my couple Caropes. I really like them. I like having a set of jazz cymbals. I've always had darker cymbals in my Sabian HHs. And I went into Paiste land. And I've been kind of living in Paiste land for quite some time. And the interesting thing is about unlathed cymbals, again, back to the unlathed question, is one of my favorite dark ride cymbals is a Paiste Dark Energy Mark I prototype cymbal that's unlathed. Well, actually, there is some lathing on it, but it's not as noticeable as the unlathing aspect of it. I don't feel like messing my setup, but all my cymbals are behind me back here, and that cymbal's back there. But it's got a beautiful dark thing, and the bottom has no lathing. On the top has a very minimal thin lathing. Okay? And it comes from the alloy, the Paiste alloy, the signature alloy. So you basically have that B15 thing going on. But what do I think of the big and ugly cymbals? I think everybody's doing them. So I wasn't real impressed by the big and ugly cymbals. The most impressive cymbals that Sabian has put out in the last few years is the Vanguard cymbals. Okay? The Vanguards and the Artisans are beautiful cymbals. And if I had the money, I would buy those. I'd buy a couple of those. Or, as I keep looking for, buys in the range of the HH, the Sabian HH from the early 80s. Those old Sabians are like the old Canadian Ks because they're made in that Canadian K factory, which is the Sabian factory today. So when you get the early Sabian HHs, you're getting the Canadian K sound, which is the pre-EAK Zildjian sound. Okay, when they started making Ks in America. So those are the cymbals I really love, are those really early Sabian 80s HHs. And I have a whole set of them, and I love them. But they don't sound dark like Koropes. And they're not dark like these unlathed Cymbals or some of the unlathed Bosphorus cymbals. See, everybody was trying to make Ks. Not Zildjian Ks, American Zildjian Ks. They were trying to make Istanbul Ks. Why were they trying to make Istanbul Ks? Because all the guys wanted that jazz cymbal sound, that cymbal sound that came from Turkey. The mystique of the Tony Williams cymbals, the mystique of the Elvin Jones cymbals, the mystique of the Roy Haynes cymbals. The funny thing is, those guys would use anything that they could get from the companies too. Because they were famous jazz guys, so they used what came to them. And Tony, in the end, was playing EAKs. Elvin played whatever cymbals he wanted. I said that last week, you know. He had a Zildjian thing, but he played Istanbuls, he played Paistes, he played Sabians. Matter of fact, you'll find Elvin Paistes for sale somewhere. You'll find somebody selling you Sabians that were Elvins. Elvin had a lot of cymbals. Because everybody was looking for the perfect ride cymbal sound. And all the jazzers were looking for the perfect ride cymbal sound. And the perfect ride cymbal sound was the dark thing. Everybody's looking for that dark K thing. Well, now everybody's making the dark K thing. All the B lines are making the dark K thing. I happened to be in Chicago this week. And I went to Maxwell's drum shop in Glendale Heights or something, I think it's called. Illinois. I used to be in Naperville. I was staying in Naperville, so I thought, I gotta go to Maxwell's drum shop. I'm right in that area of town. I spent the time, went over there. By the way, don't go to Steve Maxwell's drum shop in Chicago without making a phone call because it's by appointment only during the week. Didn't know that. I knocked on the door and Steve Jr. was there, and they were gracious enough to let me into the store and hang out for about an hour, and I walked the whole store and the warehouse, and I bought these cute little cymbal toppers right here for my flat bass Ludwig stands. They didn't have any quarter 20 wing nuts, but they had these nice little toppers, which are quite expensive, by the way, but not super expensive. I mean, $8. I like them. I actually like them a lot. I may have to write back there now, get the 8mm ones for my other cymbal stands. Because for the studio, I love being able to just do this. This is cool. It's very cool. You know. So thank you, Steve Jr. at Maxwell Drums, and the guy in the shop that walked around with me a little bit, and I forget his name. I don't think I got your name. But anyhow, thank you all. But while I was in Maxwell's drum shop, they didn't have many Paistes. They had a few, old 602s mostly. But they had a whole bunch of cymbals that were Zildjians that they lathed in the back. And they took a lot of weight off them because everybody's looking for thinner, darker cymbals. So the thinner, darker cymbal thing is so prevalent now, and there's so many different companies making them, that it just almost doesn't matter what you get. And I mean, there had to be 3 or 4 B cymbal companies on their rack. They had like a Masterworks, Amelia. I forget the names of some of these companies. These cymbal companies are out there. There's so many B Turkish cymbal companies making K-like cymbals. So if you're looking for the logo and you're looking for the name, you can't buy those cymbals because you're not going to get a name recognition with them. But if you're looking for the sound and you found that one that's that certain sound you're looking for, then you may love those cymbals. Okay? And that's what Bosphorus was. My third question was about Bosphorus. Bosphorus was another company that came about to make those Ks. So Drummer Braves asked me a question, what do you think of Bosphorus cymbals? Well, first off, Bosphorus was another company that came about to make those Ks. So Drummer Braves asked me a question, what do you think of Bosphorus cymbals? Well, first off, Bosphorus was another company that came about to make those Ks. So Drummer Braves asked me a question, what do you think of Bosphorus cymbals? the guys playing Bosphorus cymbals early on were guys that had some investment in that company for a while there. Jeff Hamilton, famous jazz drummer, played with Diana Krall and many others, the Hamilton Clayton Orchestra, and he was a big band. He's a great drummer. If you want to watch brush playing, you want to watch Jeff Hamilton. You definitely want to take a listen to Jeff Hamilton. Jeff Hamilton was one of the early Bosphorus endorsers. Stanton Moore, early Bosphorus endorser. Another guy who was a Bosphorus guy who I met in London in 2008 when my wife and I went to the UK for the first time, a jazz drummer named Steve Davis, who's got a YouTube channel, by the way, and I follow his YouTube channel, and he has like 150 subscribers, but he's got one of the most unique jazz styles of any guy out there. He is not a copycat. He's not a clone of a bebop drummer. He's got his own thing. He plays cymbals so delicately. He plays Bosphorus cymbals. Amazing player. So there's some amazing players of Bosphorus cymbals is what I'm saying. But Jeff Hamilton and Stanton Moore, they left Bosphorus. And they went with a guy who, as another guy's got a YouTube channel, I keep forgetting his name, but he was the guy that started Crescent Cymbals. He took his investment out of Bosphorus or started another, he knew some guys in Turkey and he started making Crescent Cymbals. And Crescent Cymbals was an offshoot of Bosphorus for a while until they merged with Sabian, and Sabian bought Crescent, and they basically now make Jeff Hamilton's signature cymbals and Stanton Moore's signature cymbals. But Bosphorus still remains. So are Bosphorus cymbals cool? They're excellent cymbals. They're another one of those companies that's been around 20 years. They were making them out of the Turkish tradition. Probably some guys that used to work in the K factory or the Istanbul factory and decided to go off and make their own line of cymbals, Bosphorus. The difference is Bosphorus has been around a good 20 plus years now. So Bosphorus has got a tradition just like Istanbul does. Everybody else that's under 20 years kind of falls into the category of B cymbals to me. Which ones are going to make it to the end, I don't know. No, I'm not sure. Plus, there's a whole bunch of new guys that are just lathing cymbals, like Steve Maxwell's getting into that now. By the way, back to the Steve Maxwell story. And I'm all over the place, but it's all about cymbals this week. In the store, I was hitting the Steve Maxwell relayed A Zildjian cymbals with no logos on them, of course. And they all have that dark, thin, dark sound. I mean, the cost of them were just off the chain. I mean, if I'm spending $300 on a thin ride cymbal, you know, I'd rather go find a used Carope or a used Constantinople or something, to be honest, and find one that I want. But that's just me. I mean, if the price is way down, that's a different ballgame. That's what I say about these B-line cymbals, is that if the price is down, then, and it's the sound you want, buy it. You know? But for me, I spent so many years with trying to get name recognition that I can't see me going out and buying the B-line cymbals. I just can't spend the money on it. Somebody gives them to me, I may fall in love with them. Say, oh, these are great. But I don't find a bad cymbal out there really today. A bad cymbal is just a bad cymbal. When I hear one, I go, that's a bad cymbal. There's bad Zildjians, there's bad Paistes, there's bad Sabians, there's probably some bad Bosphorus cymbals. There's definitely some bad old K Zildjian Istanbuls. But there's bad, there's good. Now, usually what you're going to get with Zildjian, you're going to get the name Zildjian and you're going to get recognition. Paiste, you're going to get a name. You're going to get a certain thing that's a Paiste thing. So I'm looking for unique cymbals. That's my vibe. I want unique. I want things that make my signature sound. And this has become one of my sounds, this Paiste thing. So I enjoy the Paiste thing. All that to say is all the questions this week had to do with unlathed, lathed. Do I like unlathed cymbals? Yeah, I like unlathed cymbals. The Rudes were my first ones. Okay? The Dark Energy Mark I was a mixture of a unlathed bottom, lathed top. You know, almost unlathed top. The Pasha Ride, I've had them. Dark. Usually unlathing has to do with darkness, trying to go with darkness. Or super heavy. Matter of fact, one of the first unlathed cymbals I ever saw was the Earth Ride by Zildjian. Zildjian made the Earth Ride. But that sucker was so heavy, was so pingy. But what did 70s cymbal sounds like? Pingy rides. By the 80s, pingy rides were it. Heavy metal guys, pingy rides are still it. I have no use for a 3,050, 3,500 gram, 20-inch ride cymbal. It sounds like a ding, 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 ding. That just doesn't do anything for me. Because back in the day when I was younger, I wanted that K sound. I wanted that thin, dark K sound is what I wanted. Some jazz drummer in college put that in my brain. Probably listening to guys like Steve Dunn or, you know, in college, or Pat Catita in college. Tony Bartone, my friend Tony Bartone, he played mostly that Zildjian. He was more of a Buddy guy. Buddy guy had the bright Zildjian thing. But Zildjians were the bright, Ks were the dark, and that was the difference. And Pisces were a different bright. So everybody wants dark. I don't want dark anymore. Or as dark, let's put it that way. I think this is a pretty dark cymbal, but it's got like a glassy tone to it, you know? That's dark. But it's a flat ride. This is, that's China-like. That's my Pisces 17-inch fast crash with holes cut in it to make it a Swiss crash. Anyhow, we went the gamut. Bosphorus are good. Sabian big and ugly. Not so big on, but they are ugly. They are dark. They are massive sounding. I don't want them. I'm getting away from it. Unlathed versus lathed. I think there's some unlathed that are really cool. There are probably some unlathed that are not really cool. My first experience was the rude hi-hats. So, this is the cymbal episode, this Ask Earl Anything. I definitely gave you my traditional Earl rants. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. And just for yucks, I'm going to still see if I can stay in my crazy, eclectic mode. Thanks for watching. Your questions make the show. Have a great day.